The gospel for the coming Sunday has Jesus trying to explain something that is very difficult for the disciples and probably for us to understand. He begins with this kind of moment, wondering what people are saying behind his back about him, asking the disciples, so, what are they saying? And then he flips the question to them, and what do you say? Peter, who often is the voice for the community of faith, offers up his interpretation of who Jesus was. And then Jesus surprisingly rebukes the disciples, tells them not to tell anyone. It's a very strong word. It's the same word he uses to drive demons out of people. He then explains what it means that he is the anointed one, and it involves suffering and rejection. At which point, Peter takes him aside and uses that same word. He rebukes Jesus. And Jesus then responds by rebuking Peter. Calls him Satan. Up till this point in the gospel, it's the demons that get who Jesus was. Peter's the one who just confessed who Jesus was. Jesus does not, in the Gospel of Mark, offer any appreciation of that comment. But instead, the next time he talks to Peter, he calls him Satan. I think he says it with some tenderness, if that's possible. And then he makes several attempts to explain to the disciples. And we see these, I think we've talked about them before, these gar clauses that are often translated for, and I translate cause. And the idea is that every time Jesus uses one of these cause, he realizes they're not getting it. He leans in a little closer and tries to explain it to them one more time. But just again, we're bombarded with these extra clauses. So let's listen to this text. Jesus and his disciples were going through the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he was asking them, so, who do people say that I am? And they answered him, well, some people say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and others one of the prophets. And Jesus answered them and said, and who do you say that I am? And Peter said, you're the anointed one. And Jesus rebuked them to tell no one about this. And he began to teach them, saying that it's inevitable that the human one be rejected and suffer many things. Be rejected by the high priest, the legal experts, and the elders, and be put to death. And 3 days after being put to death, he will rise. He was speaking the word clearly. And Peter, taking him aside, began to rebuke him. Jesus, seeing the others, turned and rebuked Peter and said, get behind me, Satan. Because you're not thinking in God's terms, but in human terms. And summoning the crowd together with the disciples, he began to say to them, whoever wants to follow me must take up his cross and follow me. Because all who want to save their lives will lose them. But all who lose their lives for me and for the good news will save them. Because what does it profit a people to gain the whole world and forfeit their lives? Because what would a person give in exchange for their life? Because all who are ashamed of me in this adulterous and sinful age, of them also the human one will be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. We shouldn't be surprised that the disciples have a hard time understanding what it means to take up their cross. Crosses were instruments of torture and execution in the ancient world. To die on a cross was scandalous. And so when Jesus invites the disciples to take up their cross, what is he saying? He's saying, but they are to follow him. And that this will come with its own suffering. As Berrigan said, if you want to follow Jesus, you better look good on wood. They too will have to take their commitment and pay the ultimate price. No wonder it's difficult for them and for us to understand. Godspeed as you try to bring this way of thinking the things of God to yourself and the people whom you serve.